Have you ever noticed that the most powerful person in the room is almost never the loudest one? Think about that for a moment. Think about the people in your life who carry real weight, real authority, real peace. Chances are they don't scramble to explain themselves. They don't rush to respond to every accusation. They don't feel the pressure to defend themselves every time someone misunderstands them. And there is a reason for that. Chosen one, what God is about to teach you today is one of the most underestimated principles in the spiritual life and in life itself. It is not about giving up. It is not about being passive. It is not about letting people walk over you. It is about understanding that silence, true intentional silence, is not the absence of power. It is power. If you have ever felt the pull to over-explain yourself, if you have ever walked away from a conversation, feeling like your words made things worse instead of better, if you have ever wondered why staying quiet sometimes feels harder than fighting, that is not a weakness in you. That is God positioning you to learn something deeper. Today, I am going to show you exactly what silence is, what it isn't, when to use it, and why the enemy is terrified of a person who has truly learned to master it. What you understand today will change the way you respond for the rest of your life. Before we go deeper into this, I need you to do something. If you have ever said too much in a moment of anger and regretted it afterward, if you have ever felt dragged into an argument that cost you more than it was worth, if you have ever sensed in your spirit that you were supposed to stay quiet but couldn't, type "teach me" in the comments right now. This isn't just information. God is revealing a weapon to you today, one that is already in your hands. You just haven't learned how to carry it yet. Stay until the very end, because the last part of this teaching will show you exactly how to begin practicing this starting today. Let's explore this together. Here is the thing about silence. Most people have been taught to see it as a problem. Silence means you have nothing to say. Silence means you are afraid. Silence means you lost. That is what the world says. That is what many of us absorbed growing up. That if you don't defend yourself, you are weak. That if you don't respond, you are a pushover. That if you don't fight back with your words, you are letting the enemy win. And so we talk, we explain, we argue, we justify, we post, we vent. We respond to every comment, every accusation, every whisper. And at the end of it all, we feel more exhausted, not less, more confused, not more clear, more exposed, not more protected. My beloved child, this is not what God intended. The truth is that silence has been misunderstood for generations, and it is time for that to change. Because once you understand what silence actually is, not what it looks like from the outside, but what it does in the spiritual realm, everything shifts. Even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. Proverbs 17:28. That is not just advice. That is a principle that operates whether you are aware of it or not. Today, we are going to make you aware. So let's start at the very beginning. What is silence, really? Because here is where most people get it wrong. They think silence is about doing nothing. They picture silence as a blank space, an empty response, a retreat. And when they think of it that way, it feels cowardly. It feels like losing. It feels like giving up ground. But that is not the silence we are talking about today, chosen one. There is a profound difference between the silence of someone who has nothing to say and the silence of someone who has chosen not to say it. One comes from emptiness, the other comes from authority, and the moment you understand that distinction, you will never look at quietness the same way again. Think about it this way. When you are in a conversation that is getting heated and you feel that rising pressure to respond, what is that pressure actually asking you to do? It is asking you to prove yourself. It is asking you to justify your worth. It is asking you to perform your innocence for an audience that may not even be qualified to judge it. And the moment you start performing, you have already handed over your power. Intentional silence says, I know who I am. I don't need this conversation to confirm it. That is not weakness. That is the deepest form of self-possession. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. Now here is something I want you to notice. God didn't say the Lord will fight for you after you have argued your case. He didn't say he had fight for you after you have explained yourself to everyone who doubted you. He said, be still. The stillness is the condition. The stillness is the posture that opens the door for divine intervention. My beloved child, your silence is not surrender. Your silence is assignment. And this ties into something even deeper. Because not all silence is the same. There are actually 3 distinct types of silence that matter spiritually. And once you can identify which one you are operating in, you can make intentional choices rather than reactive ones. The first is strategic silence, choosing not to speak because the timing is wrong, the audience isn't ready, or the information would be used against you. This is the silence of wisdom. The second is protective silence, choosing not to engage because the battle you are being drawn into is designed to drain you, distract you, or destabilize you. This is the silence of discernment. And the third is devotional silence, learning to be quiet before God, not just in the world, but in your own inner life. This is the silence of intimacy. Most people only ever think about the first one, but all 3 are essential, and all 3 require practice. Now let me show you something that might surprise you, because the reason the enemy fights so hard to keep you talking is not that your words are dangerous to him. It is that your silence is. Here is where it gets really interesting. When you constantly react, constantly defend, constantly respond, you are giving the enemy a map of your vulnerabilities. Every time you rush to explain yourself, you are showing him exactly what insecurities he can press on. Every time you get pulled into an argument, you are confirming that the bait worked. But when you go quiet, when you hold your peace and refuse to engage, the enemy loses his most powerful tool of control over you. Reaction is the trap. Silence is the escape, and God has been trying to teach his people this since the very beginning. Now let's go a little deeper, because once you understand the foundation, there is an entire world of meaning underneath it. Here is something I want you to really sit with. Confident people are quiet people. Not always, not in every context. But there is a pattern, a consistent observable pattern, that the people who carry the most internal authority tend to use the fewest words to express it. And that is not a coincidence. It is a principle, chosen one. The person who feels the need to constantly explain themselves is often at a deeper level seeking permission. Permission to be who they are. Permission to have made the choices they made. Permission to occupy the space they are in. And when we seek permission through our words, we are, whether we realize it or not, placing the power to validate us in the hands of whoever we are speaking to. Real confidence doesn't seek permission. Real confidence simply is. My beloved child, you do not need to convince anyone of your worth. Not with your words, not with your explanations, not with your justifications. Your worth was decided long before you were born, and it was decided by a source that cannot be overruled by any human opinion. When you know that, truly know it, your relationship with words changes completely. Now this leads into something that is absolutely critical to understand, and I want to be very direct about it because it has changed everything for the people who have grasped it. When someone tries to provoke you, whether it is an accusation, a criticism, an insult, a rumor, that is almost never a random event. There is a strategy behind it. The provocation is specifically designed to pull you out of your peace, out of your position, and into a reaction that makes you look unstable, defensive, or small. And here is the terrifying part. If you take the bait, if you react the way the provocation is designed to make you react, you confirm everything they wanted to say about you without them even having to say it. The bait is always a trap. Always. And the only way out of the trap is not to enter it, which means silence isn't the passive option. Silence is the strategic option. Here is where it gets fascinating, because there is another dimension to this that goes even deeper. There is a difference between being silent before God and being silent before people, and both matter. But they serve different purposes. Silence before people protects your energy, your position, and your peace. But silence before God does something entirely different. It opens a channel. It creates space for Him to speak, to reveal, to guide. Most of us are so filled with noise, our own thoughts, our own words, our own prayers that are really just us talking, that we never create the space to receive what God is actually trying to say. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Psalm 37:7, the word still here carries weight. It means to cease striving, to let go of the need to manage the outcome, to trust enough to be quiet. And that kind of quiet before God is the foundation that makes all other forms of intentional silence possible. My beloved child, you cannot operate from a place of authority that you haven't first received in a place of stillness. And this connects to something else that is worth understanding: the relationship between silence and credibility. Think about someone in your life who talks constantly, who fills every silence, who has an opinion on everything, a comment on every situation, an explanation for every decision. Now think about how much weight their words carry often. Not much, because words that are everywhere become cheap. But think about someone who speaks rarely, carefully, and with intention. When that person speaks, everyone listens. The scarcity of their words creates the weight of their words. This is not a communication technique. This is a spiritual principle. When you speak less, what you do say carries more authority. And when what you say carries more authority, you don't need to say as much. The paradox of silence is that it amplifies your voice. Now let's bring this down to the ground, because theory without application is just interesting information. And what God is revealing to you today is not meant to stay in your head. It is meant to change what you do tomorrow morning. So how does this actually work in real life? The first thing you need to learn is how to recognize the moments when silence is the right choice, because it will not always be obvious. Your emotions will tell you to respond. Your pride will tell you that silence looks like weakness. Your anxiety will tell you that if you don't explain yourself right now, people will believe the wrong thing about you, and all of those voices will feel urgent and real. But here are 4 specific situations where silence is almost always the right answer. When you are being attacked, when someone comes at you with accusations, whether publicly or privately, the most powerful thing you can do is not immediately respond. Not because you have no defense, but because your response in that moment is almost certainly going to be driven by emotion, not wisdom. The attack is designed to destabilize you. Silence stabilizes you. It gives you time. It refuses the enemy the reaction he was counting on. When you are being misunderstood, this is one of the hardest ones, because the pull to correct the misunderstanding is intense. We want people to see the truth. We want to set the record straight. But here is what I have seen over and over again. When you over-explain yourself to someone who has already decided what they believe about you, your explanation rarely changes their mind. It often makes things worse. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let your life, your actions, your fruit speak the truth that your words cannot. When you are angry, my beloved child, this one is not optional, it is a rule. Never make permanent decisions, send permanent messages, or speak permanent words in a temporary emotional state. Anger is a signal, not a script. When you feel that heat rising inside you, that is your body telling you something matters. It is not your cue to speak. When you are in a season where nothing seems to be moving, and the temptation is to start talking, start announcing your plans, defending your process, explaining why things haven't happened yet, that is when silence protects the seed that God has planted in you. There are things that die when they are exposed too early. Not everything that God is growing in you is ready to be seen yet. Now, let me show you something else, because there is a side to silence in relationships that doesn't get talked about enough. Silence in relationships can either heal or harm, and the difference is entirely in the intention behind it. Healing silence says, I am not going to speak right now because I want to respond from wisdom, not from wounds. It creates space. It prevents damage. It protects the relationship by protecting the conversation from words that cannot be taken back. Harmful silence says, I am punishing you by not speaking. It is used as a weapon of control or withdrawal. It doesn't protect, it manipulates. And this is critical to understand. The silence we are talking about today is never punitive. It is never passive aggression dressed up in spiritual language. If you are using silence to punish someone, that is not a weapon of faith. That is a wound expressing itself. The question to ask yourself is always, am I being quiet because of wisdom or because of hurt? One builds, the other destroys. Now here is where it gets really important, because I want to talk about the mistakes. Because understanding what silence is not is just as important as understanding what it is. The first mistake is using silence as avoidance. There are conversations that need to happen. There are truths that need to be spoken. There are moments where silence is not wisdom. It is cowardice. Not every hard conversation should be avoided because it is uncomfortable. Discernment means knowing the difference between a conversation that needs to happen and a battle that needs to be refused. The second mistake is staying silent out of fear rather than faith. Fear-based silence says, I am not speaking because I am terrified of what will happen if I do. Faith-based silence says, I am not speaking because I trust that God is handling this. From the outside, they might look the same, but on the inside, they are completely different. One shrinks you, the other frees you. The third mistake is passive silence, where you simply have nothing to say, nothing to contribute, no intentionality behind your quiet. This isn't a weapon. It is just empty space. Silence only becomes powerful when it is chosen, and this brings me to something I want you to really hold on to. There is a version of you that is already operating in this. You have felt it before. The moment after someone said something cruel and you decided, consciously or not to respond. And something in you stood a little taller, and the situation resolved in a way it never would have if you had fought. That wasn't luck. That was the principle operating. That was you briefly carrying a weapon you didn't yet know you had. Chosen one. The difference between then and now is that now you are going to do it on purpose. Let me explain what this looks like at different stages, because there is a progression to this, and knowing where you are in it helps you know where you are going. At the beginning, staying silent feels like holding back a flood. The pressure is immense. Your heart is pounding. Every part of you wants to say something, and you might manage it in some situations but completely fail in others. That is normal. That is not failure. That is the beginning of a practice. After a while, with intention, with prayer, with repetition, something begins to shift. You start to feel the pause before the reaction. That pause is everything. It is the gap between stimulus and response, and it is in that gap that wisdom lives. You begin to notice what is trying to provoke you and why. You start to see the patterns, the situations, the people, the triggers, and you can make a choice rather than just react. Eventually, silence stops being something you have to fight for. It becomes your default posture, not because you have gone emotionless or disconnected from life, but because you have found a place of deep internal stability that doesn't need external noise to feel secure. And when you speak from that place, when you finally do open your mouth, people feel the difference. There is a weight to it, a clarity, an authority that cannot be manufactured. This is not something that happens in a week, but it is something that can begin today. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. Colossians 4-6, my beloved child, words seasoned with salt are words used sparingly, purposefully, and with flavor, not a flood, not a defense, not a performance, an offering. So now, chosen one, you understand the concept, you understand the layers, you understand how it works in real life and where the mistakes are. The question now is, what do you actually do with this starting today? Because this is where most teachings end, at the level of inspiration. And inspiration without instruction fades within 48 hours. I don't want that for you. So let me be very specific. The first thing I want you to understand is that you are not starting from zero. You have already experienced the power of silence, even if only in small moments, even if by accident. What we are doing now is making it intentional. We are moving from accidental to on purpose. The most important thing you can build right now is what I would call the holy pause. It is a moment, just a few seconds, between what happens to you and how you respond to it. 3 seconds is enough to change the entire outcome of a conversation. In those 3 seconds, you can ask yourself, does this need a response? Is this the right moment? Am I speaking from wisdom or from wound? 3 seconds sounds small in the moment. It is enormous. Start practicing this in low-stakes situations. Not the biggest conflict in your life, not the most charged relationship. Start with the small stuff. The comment at work, the text that irritated you, the social media post that made your blood boil. Practice the pause. Let the moment pass. See what happens. What you will often find is that the moment passes and nothing was lost. Nobody needed your response. The situation resolved. The person moved on. And you didn't spend the next 2 hours replaying what you said and wondering how it landed. Now, there is another dimension to this that is specifically about your relationship with God, and it is something I want you to take seriously because everything else flows from here. If you want to carry the kind of silence that operates with authority, it has to be rooted in something. You cannot manufacture peace from a place of inner chaos. You cannot respond from wisdom if you are not receiving wisdom from anywhere. The stillness before God is the source. The silence in the world is the expression. If you have the expression without the source, it will eventually run out. Rest is your salvation. In quietness and trust is your strength. Those two things are inseparable. The reason you can be silent in the face of accusation is because you trust that God sees. The reason you can hold your peace in the middle of injustice is because you trust that God fights. The reason you can let some things go without a word is because you trust that truth doesn't need your help to survive. That trust is built in the quiet place, which is why your daily practice of silence before God is not optional. It is the infrastructure everything else is built on. And here is the last thing I want to say before we close this section, because I want you to understand what is possible on the other side of this. There is a version of your life where you stop spending emotional energy defending yourself to people who have already decided what they believe. There is a version of your life where you stop entering battles that were designed to drain you. There is a version of your life where your words carry so much weight because they are used so intentionally that when you speak, something changes in rooms, in relationships, in the spiritual atmosphere around you. That version of you is not far away. It is one decision, practiced daily away, chosen one. The weapon has always been yours. Today you are learning how to hold it. So now, my beloved child, let's talk about what this looks like in practical terms. Because God doesn't just want you to understand this teaching, He wants you to walk in it. Here are 5 specific practices to begin with. Practice 1, the 24-hour experiment. For 1 full day, decide that you will not explain yourself, justify a decision, or defend your choices to anyone, unless it is absolutely necessary for safety or clarity. This doesn't mean being rude or distant. It simply means letting some things stand without explanation. Watch what happens. Notice the pressure you feel. Notice how much of your daily energy goes into managing what other people think of you. This experiment will show you, in real time, how much of your life is driven by the need for external approval. Practice 2. The 3-second pause. Before every significant response, especially in emotionally charged moments, pause for 3 seconds, breathe once. Ask yourself, does this need, or what is this situation actually asking of me? If you can only do one thing from this teaching, do this one. The 3-second pause is the door between reaction and choice. Practice 3, let your actions speak. Identify one area of your life where you have been using words to compensate for action, where you have been explaining your progress instead of making progress, where you have been announcing your plans instead of executing them. This week, go silent on the announcement and go loud on the work. Let what you build be your statement. Practice 4, daily stillness before God. Set aside 10 minutes a day, not to pray aloud, not to read, not to listen to anything, but simply to be quiet before God. No agenda, no request list, just open, available silence. This might feel uncomfortable at first. That discomfort is meaningful. It will tell you exactly how much noise you have been carrying inside. Lean into it over time. This practice will become the most important 10 minutes of your day. Practice 5, the evening audit. At the end of each day, ask yourself one question: which words did I speak today that were unnecessary? Not to condemn yourself, but to build awareness. Every day we speak hundreds of words that serve nothing, that leak energy, reveal vulnerabilities, or simply fill space. Awareness is the beginning of change. As you begin to practice these things, first in small moments, then in bigger ones, you will start to notice a shift. Not overnight, but progressively. The first milestone is simply becoming aware of the moments when you are about to react and feeling the option to choose differently. The second milestone is actually making that choice consistently, even when it is hard. And the third milestone is finding that peace has become your default, not something you have to fight for, but something you protect. If this teaching has helped you, share it with someone who needs it, someone in your life who is exhausted from fighting battles with their words, someone who needs to understand that the silence they have been taught to see as weakness is actually the weapon they have been searching for. Comment below, what is one thing you are going to practice this week? I want to hear from you. If this stirred something in you today, pause with me for a moment. Let us go before God together. Father, we come before you with open hands and quiet hearts. Thank you. Thank you for the truth you have unveiled today. Thank you that even in this moment, you are the teacher and we are the students, and that you are patient enough, faithful enough, and wise enough to lead us into understanding that changes the way we walk through the world. For every person receiving this today, I pray first that you open their eyes. Not just their natural eyes, but the eyes of their spirit. Let them begin to see the moments, the provocations, the pressures, the pulls, and to recognize them for what they are. Give them the discernment to know when silence is wisdom and when speaking is necessary. I pray that you grant them wisdom that exceeds their own understanding. Wisdom to pause when everything in them wants to react. Wisdom to trust you in the spaces where they feel they have to perform. Wisdom to understand that your defense of them is more powerful than any defense they could ever mount themselves. And I pray that you guide them as they practice this, because this is not a one-time decision. It is a daily walk. There will be days when they hold their peace beautifully, and there will be days when they fail. Meet them in both. Be present in both, and let every moment, the victories and the struggles, build them into the people you designed them to be. May their silence become a testimony. May their stillness become a shelter. May what they do not say be as powerful as what they do. And may they walk from this day forward, knowing that in the quiet, in the discipline of choosing peace over reaction, they are carrying a weapon that the enemy cannot answer. In Jesus' name, amen. If that prayer touched you, type Amen in the comments. Let this moment be sealed. Thank you for staying until the end, chosen one. If your spirit was stirred today, if something in this teaching unlocked a truth you have been circling around for a long time, don't let this moment pass quietly. Leave a comment and tell me, what is one situation where you are going to practice intentional silence this week? I want to know. And your answer might be exactly what someone else reading it needs to hear. If this helped you, share it with someone who needs it. Not everyone is ready for this truth, but someone in your life is. Be the one who puts it in their hands. And if you want more teachings like this one, subscribe. There is so much more to explore together. My beloved child, you were never meant to fight every battle with your voice. Some of your greatest victories will happen in the silence. Go carry it well.